The easiest one is your inside run, but it's short, sweet, and to the point. That's the one thing that we've gotten away from the traditional practicing is if you go too long, your susceptibility to injury, control how many reps your best players get because you can't ask your best sprinter to sprint in 8 different races. They're going to get hurt, fatigue. Short, sweet, and to the point. Your one-on-ones for your skilled kids.
Welcome to this episode of Sprint-Based Football, presented by Titan GPS. Founded and based in Texas, Titan GPS is your key to sprint-based football success. Designed specifically for high school football, Titan tracks the metrics that matter, like top speed, explosive acceleration, and even the powerful truck stick, speed times weight, for the ultimate performance insight. Whether it's optimizing practice, spotlighting players with 3D highlights, or giving recruiters verified in-game stats, Titan delivers. And with no minimums to get started, Titan walks you through every step. Message them on X @TitanSensor to learn more. Titan GPS, performance measured, potential unlocked. Hey, this is the Sprint-Based Football Podcast, and I'm Tony Holler. I can't wait for this session coming up today. This is Steve Bell from Augustana College. This is a college football coach who I think really embraces the ideals of sprint-based football and the new way of doing things. Stay tuned. This is going to be a great episode.
Thank you, Tony.
The Sprint-Based Football Podcast moves on to the second head college coach that we've had on this. We have a guy named Pedro Arruza from Randolph-Macon, who does a great job and has really been successful with this new sprint-based football approach. So, Steve, tell me something about you and your coaching career.
I'm from Minnesota originally. I started out, played football at Bemidji State University up in northwest Minnesota, and then GA'd there. Then came down to Illinois in 1995 as the offensive coordinator at McMurray College. That kind of catapulted me into my first head job at Monmouth College, where I was there for 15 years. And then 10 years ago, kind of moved from that position at Monmouth to Augustana, and excited, that we're here and loved being in the CCIWs. It's not a long path, but it's been a very adventurous path and have really enjoyed every step of the way.
The geography of your 3 coaching ventures, I think a lot of people think of Illinois and they think of Chicago, but you go to the western part of the state, McMurray, Monmouth, Augustana, that's a different country out there, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. From Chicago, it's definitely different. But if you think about it, I've kind of stayed on the west side of the state, and wonderful people everywhere I've been, and tremendous experiences being around these players since 1995 down in Illinois. It's just been amazing.
Yeah, just such an interesting mix. I know you get a lot of Chicago recruits, but you also get a lot of recruits from, it seems like there's 100 schools in the western part of the state that play amazing football for the size of their school. So I know you get a lot of those kids too.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, I know we're going to get off topic a little bit, but one of the things that attracted me to Augustana was, having been the coach at Monmouth for 15 years, we were recruiting every single 1 through 4A school, getting their best athlete or the best top 2 athletes at their school, and built a lot of success doing that. When I moved to Augustana, we could still keep that model and still recruit the small town kids, but then we could also shift a little bit of focus to trying to grab those 6, 7, 8A kids from the Chicagoland area. So it's interesting. You've got kids from Chicagoland, you've got kids from small towns. You wouldn't think they'd have very much in common, but those kids end up being best friends, and it's kind of a neat dynamic. And I didn't have that at Monmouth because it was hard to get those Chicagoland kids to come to a small town like that. But Augustana is in the Quad Cities, and they've got every amenity you'd ever need in the Quad Cities, so we can attract anybody here.
And I hate to dwell on the past, but if you go way back, I can't remember how many years back, Augustana had a run in Division III that was kind of unparalleled, right?
Yeah, 4 national titles in a row back in the mid-'80s. That's ridiculous. And then Coach Reed kept that going, didn't quite hit that bar later in his career, but went through the mid-'90s, and they were tremendous. And so, yeah, a lot of tradition, a lot of history at Augustana.
And very unique. I remember reading one time, correct me if I'm wrong, but Reed really wanted to run the ball. And one of the years they went undefeated, they actually had more interceptions than they had receptions.
I've heard that one before, yeah.
Could that be true?
It is true. It is true, yeah. They chose to throw the ball when they wanted to throw, and it was usually probably a really, really long gain or a touchdown because they kind of lulled everybody to sleep. But what a great run those guys had and Augustana had.
I spent the morning going through a PowerPoint that you had delivered at a clinic, and it's probably the reason why Brad Dixon from Camp Point told me, hey, you got to get this guy on the podcast. And I was going through it, and it got me excited. I love the thing that you said. One of the coaching mantras coaches have always said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And one of the problems with that mindset is that sometimes we have just enough success to continue doing things that maybe we should change. And I say that every program has enough success to justify their process, but you have decided that sometimes, even if it's not broke, you need to break it to make it better.
Well, I think, and I'm going to credit Dave Ragone. I know that you and Dave's one of my assistants, longtime assistant, has been with me at 3 different schools for over 25 years, 26 years, actually. He's my offensive line coach. So we've been together a long time and have a very deep, deep relationship with the game of football. But I'm going to give him a lot of credit because that's kind of way back in the day. That was something that we talked about was why keep doing the same thing that you were just because you taught that way, just because you grew up that way. And then it made a lot of sense is, hey, at least you may not change what you're doing, but at least you're evaluating what you're doing to see if it is the right way. And sometimes you need to break it and try to make it a little bit better, maybe a little bit more efficient. And that's what I think we've done here in the past 2 to 3 years is we've looked at it. That started a long time ago. So I kind of kicked myself because about 3 or 4 years prior to making the full change, we had already started thinking about making a change that we knew there was a better way. And we just didn't pull the trigger to do it. And then we finally did. And it's been just outstanding. So it'll get better because we'll tweak it and say, hey, what are we not doing good? What's not very efficient? Our lifting has changed. We just hired a new strength coach, and that will be a great change because he'll bring in a lot of different thoughts in terms of taking the weight room and making you a better football player as opposed to the old meathead lifting strength training coach.
Let's talk about that a little bit with your lifting, because people are always, they're very unsatisfied when I say, hey, strength is good. Yes, lift. But you need to prioritize speed. You need to sprint before you lift, not after you lift. You need to sprint when you're fresh, not when you're tired. And you talk about a velocity-based weight room. I wrote those words down this morning. I thought, I want to hear what that means.
Yeah. A lot of it is marrying what you're doing on the field with what you're doing in the weight room and not just doing what you're doing in the weight room. That's what strength coaches do. No, it's trying to make you a functional, better athlete. And I'm excited about this because our new strength coach, I have to know him. He sat on my couch for 24 years now. So my son, who has a master's in exercise physiology, just got done playing at the University of South Dakota, one of the best FCS programs in the country. He's coming in with some really, really fresh ideas that he did in college, but he also did an unbelievable internship down at the Sports Academy in Frisco, Texas, with the trainers down there. And so he's bringing a lot of what you talk about he's going to bring that into the weight room for us because it's about being a better athlete, not just a lifter. And how can I be a more functional, athletic, faster, twitchier athlete? And how do I marry those two things from the field to the weight room? And so we're excited about that.
I remember coaches talking about kids that had the look that couldn't play.
We all played with them.
For sure.
Yeah.
It looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane.
Yep.
Why did the extreme progress in the weight room not show up on the field? Are there any examples of the changes in your future weight room stuff through your son? Can you give us an example of we used to do this and now we're going to do more the other way?
Sure. So one thing, as you said it earlier, is running before you lift. So that was one that when we talked about, okay, what do you want? Give me the model of what you want this to look like. That was the first thing that Carter said was, no, we're running before we get into the weight room because that's really important that you said that you're fresh. This is when I have an opportunity to make a huge difference in your speed training when you're not fatigued. That was the first thing that he said was that we're changing, we're flipping the way that...
that's not a big change.
No, it's not, and so do I.
And for those people that are like, well, but I've never done it that way, I can't imagine a better warm-up.
Yeah.
than to do
Yeah.
60 seconds of work in 5-second intervals and actually do the most extreme human movement that we could possibly do, which
Yep.
is sprinting in a straight line and getting timed. If you're not getting timed, I don't think you're getting really sprint. You're just running, and that's not the goal. But I think those people move weights better after doing those things.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm excited about that and moving the bar. And this is something that we've got to progress at Augustana, but being able to track bar speed and being able to move weight quickly as opposed to push a ton of weight, which obviously you grew up that way. I grew up that way, that the old Husker power lifting thought process. And I know we've gotten away from that across the country pretty much, but I still think there's that mentality out there of how much do you bench? How much do you squat? I'd rather be how fast do you move that weight? How explosive are you as opposed to how much you actually throw up? Does that make sense? On the
Yeah.
bar. Yeah.
It sounds like you're headed through some technology things as well in the weight room.
Yep.
Have you invested in some stuff, or are you
Well,
thinking about investing in some stuff?
we've thought about it, Tony. A lot of it comes down to this.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
It's expensive.
you've got to get that commitment to do that. But we've done what we can do within the confines of what we have. Some of it, we'd obviously like to advance that technology as much as we possibly can, but we'll get there. We'll get there for sure.
So one of the things, kind of getting back to a point we always did, and we shouldn't beat ourselves up because it's the way our DNA works, that we have something called anchor bias. That anchor bias helped our ancestors to survive because they absorbed things from their elders, which probably were healthy things, and they ingratiated themselves to their parents and their community. And so they had a much more likelihood to live longer and have kids than people who rejected all of the evidence that the community had. So we have a tendency to just grab hold of that first thing we learned and how we were trained and how we went through things. And sometimes that becomes our identity. And when it becomes our identity, we fight for who we are. So there are so many programs that are the same as they were 50 years ago. And can you show any examples of old school Steve Bell and new school Steve Bell?
Oh, 100%. And I fall back, you'll know this name drop, but growing up playing ball in the 80s through the early 90s, the big name in Minnesota, if you paid attention, if you had any wherewithal what was going on football-wise, John Gallardi.
Great book.
Well, what did John Gallardi, and it took a long time to actually truly understand what he was doing, but what was his big nit was getting my players healthy to Saturday. So he had all the no's. If you remember, he had all the no's. No hitting, no tackling, and everybody thought he was off his rocker, but he was successful, the most successful ever. Why didn't we pay attention to that? Because he was way ahead of the curve, because that's where we're at today now. So old Steve Bell was you regurgitate what you did, and it was a lot of contact, and it was a lot of, physical padded practices. Today, Steve Bell, we're not in full pads ever.
Ever.
We're never in full pads. Well, I shouldn't say that. 2 scrimmages. We scrimmage, but we never jump into full pads. All we do, though, for a picture day. But everything is helmet shoulders. We try to limit contact. Again, the game has gotten safer, but John Gallardi was way ahead of the curve. I mean, he was repetition, fast tempoed practices. Well, what are people doing nowadays? Fast tempoed practices, an hour and a half. So we've modeled our practice. We talked to Alex Tanney. He played for me at Monmouth. He was the quarterback's coach at the Philadelphia Eagles, and now is the passing game coordinator with the Colts. But we sat down for probably 7 hours with Alex and said, we know you do things different. You and your staff, Coach Sirianni's staff, does something different the way you practice. We want to hear about it. And obviously he played for me, so we had talked about this quite a bit. But boy, it was eye-opening to hear how they practiced and how little they actually were on the field volume-wise. And so it was really cool to kind of say, well, that's what John Gallardi was doing for an hour and a half back in the day. It's been interesting, yeah.
It's fascinating that you brought up the Eagles. I work with Les Spellman. And Les is, such a good guy. And we were having dinner one night. I said, I know that no NFL team's going to say, hey, we feed the cats. Now that's, they're not going to say, yeah, we got this from this track coach.
Sure.
But I said, who feeds the cats? And his answer right away, Eagles.
Yeah.
And this was like 3 or 4 years ago.
100%. Yes.
There's so much to unpack from what you just said. When you start doing less, I think you become a better coach because you have to prepare more and you have to prioritize. Instead of going in every direction, you have to go in certain directions far. I just picture so many kids that play football do not look forward to practice. It was the hell that you had to go through.
100%.
And your kids probably in a competitive way like practice.
Well, that's the goal. We tell our players is our goal is to get you to Saturday healthy. So we'll control the volume, the duration of practice, the intensity of practice by what type of day we're doing. Your job is to control the focus and the energy level that we expect on that day. But our job is to kind of control how many reps a kid gets, treating walkthrough reps as real reps. And because a lot of times walkthroughs just walkthrough and you don't count that when you do your count of how many times you run that play. We want to run that counter play 6 or 7 times during the week, whatever it may be. And we usually don't count the walkthrough reps as true rep for an individual, but our job is to get our best players to Saturdays healthy. And how do we do it? Control the volume, control the duration of practice, control the focus, I guess it would be. So we have different days that are focused on change of direction, game speed, like Tony Villani talks about. And then we have days that are more higher volume. Wednesdays are very high volume. Kind of this is where we're going to get down and dirty, competitive, physical, because we know the next day is going to be a recovery day. So,
Yep. That cycle that it's not new. You know, I mean, we're talking Jimmy Radcliffe 20 years ago at Oregon was talking 100%. About high, low. You could go 20 years before that at Oregon, a distance coach said that you cannot come out and practice high every day.
No.
You can think try. You are, but you're not.
Right.
It's going to be downhill and you're going to get hurt. So they had a hard, easy format where the hard days were performance days and the easy days were you still got stuff done. I mean, you have to get stuff done on the low days.
Absolutely.
But it's more of we're just not putting the pedal to the metal and doing a performance-based practice. One of the things I wanted to circle back to a little bit, I coached at Franklin, Tennessee. My first year there, we went all the way to the state finals and got beat by Riverdale. And our coach was an old school 3.5 hour a day coach. But as you know, those coaches still have some insights that are really good. I think we practiced the last 10 weeks of the season without full pads. Mm-hmm. And even though he violated all the volume stuff and still won, he used to say, football's not played on the ground. It's not played on the ground.
That's
and
great.
He really thought that wearing shoulder pads and helmet taught guys to play on 2 feet instead of diving on the ground all the time. And then the other thing that's so fascinating with what you talk about, you guys really limit contact, which really improves your health. Mm-hmm. But I bet you're still good tacklers.
Yeah.
How does that work? How do you limit contact? As you know, a lot of old school coaches are going to hear this and think that we're a couple woke. You know what I'm saying? Because we're soft or something. We're soft because we don't practice long enough. But you're saying that you can be a violently physical team without being violently physical every day in practice.
Well, I step back to, and those that listen to this podcast and maybe had played back then or were coaching back then, go back to John Gallardi's teams at St. John's. They never tackled. They didn't hit. They didn't use dummies. All that stuff, the nose. If you ever played against those guys, they were fast. They played the game the way it was supposed to be played. And my gosh, they won a whole lot of football games. So for doing all those things, it's like, you're counteracting everything because that's the winningest coach to ever coach in college football. Again, not smart enough. I've been doing this for 30 plus years. Why didn't I pay attention back in the day? Because that guy was doing it the right way.
I think that in The Perfect Pass, the book I recommend to everybody, that Hal Mumme often talked about, we don't waste our kids' time.
That's a good one.
They never practiced 2 hours.
Yep. It's a good one.
And they took 2 days off. They took Mondays and Fridays off.
Yep.
And you're still winning 90% of your games and you're recruiting like crazy because people are attracted to your craziness. Okay, let's pivot to health. I often say that health and speed could be looked at as the same word, that if you are beat up and unhealthy, you're slow. So when you time sprints, you get a reading, a barometer, so to speak, of the health of your team. Now, you talk about, like I do, Harry Mara's quote, where we want to enter the first game or any game, 80% in shape and 100% healthy. And if anybody starts to question that, the other part of Harry Mara's statement is instead of the other way around. If you're 80% healthy and 100% in shape, you're not very good. So I think from what I saw that you guys have seen, just like all sprint-based football programs have seen, you have seen a healthier team because of the things you did. If a coach says, how are you so healthy? Like, what are the things that you do that make you a healthier team?
I think again, I'll go back to because we're marrying two things together. We're marrying the kind of what the Eagles did, or TCU, if you want to kind of look at TCU when they color coding your praxis, because I think the color code gives your kids focus on what type of day you are. Like a yellow day for us, if you said that to any Augustana player, it's, hey, short change of direction, quick game, intermediate game. Every movement that you do in individual periods is going to be all based off of that thought process of it's going to be in and out of things very quickly. We're not going to put two skills together to elongate a drill. That's a green day. The green days are longer, kind of flipping your hips, redirecting two different directions as a DB. That's a green day. That's not
Green
a yellow.
is like go, go, go,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And so all of our, like after warm-ups, all the sprint stuff on Tuesdays is going to be change of direction based. Quick movements, efficiency, and then get out of it really, really fast. On a Wednesday, when we're green day, we're going to do the fly 10s. That's a little bit more elongated. We're going to have a 15-yard, 20-yard run in. Yep.
Performance, more like performance.
And time it. And so that's on a green day. That's more linear speed. So it's really been interesting.
And what is red? What is red?
Red is a true kind of recovery day, walkthrough, mental day. If we win the game prior, they wear ball caps like you're wearing, or stocking hats that day. If we lost the game before, they're in helmets on a red day. So they kind of like wearing the ball caps. So I think we got that from the Denver Broncos back when Mike Shanahan coached there with Terrell Davis and those guys, John Elway. And so, yeah, they did that. They don't ruin my hat day.
Yeah, I love the color coding. I'm almost positive that Pedro Arruza, Randolph-Macon uses the exact same things. And strangely, I color code all my stuff, but my stuff's different. Like the green to me is an off day, kind of like green is in regeneration.
Yeah, I got you.
And my red is like we, like caution, danger.
Yeah.
Like it's a track meet for us.
Yeah.
Or in football, it would be a game. And then yellow is caution, don't burn the stake.
Yep. I get it.
Like your Tuesday is yellow because it's basically a low day, setting yourself up for a high day. It's almost like a pregame, right?
Kind of a buildup. Yeah, that's kind of the way we look at it. It's ramp it up like a hill. You're climbing the hill. Black day is at the bottom. And so the red day is the bottom. That is basically the foundation. It's that recovery mental day. And then the black day is kind of building up that beginning part of the hill. Yellow day is in the middle of the hill. And then the apex is your green day where you're, all right, we're getting after this. This is the game. This is game-like. We do some cool things on Wednesdays that are more football focused. And then again, recovery, boom. We're going to drop all the way down to the foundation because we want you to be as healthy as we possibly can be. And then we're going to start to ramp it back up on a black day on a Friday. And then a game day is a green day. So that's kind of the thought process. It's no different than what track guys have done forever.
And your kids are probably highly aware of the color coding thing, or no?
Yeah. That was number one thing, was that color code gives you what the expectation is that day as a player. That's how we kind of, I guess, verbalize that to the players was, a yellow day. This is what we expect. This is what you should expect from us. This is what it's going to look like. Now your job is to give us the intensity and the focus that day based off of that color. We will control the duration, the repetition on that specific day based off the color. It was awesome when we saw it. It's nothing that track guys haven't been doing forever.
But it's so cool to see a sport that is such a grind sport become more of a performance sport, because grinding doesn't necessarily win.
It can if you have really, really good players and you can overcome.
If you're playing against other schools
that do the same thing, because dumb will always beat dumber. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I like that one.
I always have to plug in one of my sayings. But let me throw out some things and you tell me. Part of health, I think, with sprint-based football I've yet to speak to a sprint-based football coach that did not do RPR. Do you guys do RPR? I think the people who know RPR know zone one, zone, blah, blah, blah. But there's no textbook on implementation.
No. And I don't even think we're experts
how and how long.
Yeah.
So how do you do it?
So we got introduced to Ryan Adams, who used to be the head football coach at Sherrard High School local, but also does their strength and conditioning at Sherrard now. So Brian was coaching tight ends for us. So he was a player for me at Monmouth. So he was coaching tight ends. And so he's kind of introduced us to a lot of this stuff, Tony. But Brian brought that to us and he started it with our offensive linemen. So they would huddle and they would get around together and they would hit all the points. He does more than we do. Like I do it with our receivers. Is it voodoo? I don't know. It works.
I say it all the time
But all the
because
track guys do it.
yeah, when you pre-test and post-test is pretty amazing. I just spoke at Eastland High School last week. I had a big, strong guy test his shoulder strength. And then, I had him do 4 air squats and breathe shallow 4 times. And he lost all of his strength.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I gave it back to him. So yeah, it's voodoo or whatever.
No, it's
but
not voodoo. I know it's not voodoo.
the breathing is definitely scientific.
Yep.
I think the pressure points and connection, there's just no science behind it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which to me, if you say, oh, it's voodoo, it almost makes people lean in.
Yeah.
Like, okay, let's try this.
But I'll tell you what, right now, if our kids didn't do it, they would not feel the same. I can 100% guarantee you that. They would not. So getting together, and I fall back when I was doing an internship back in the late 80s. So again, I'm going backwards here because there was a lot of stuff going on then that was kind of off the chart and you didn't pay attention to. So I got exposed to a woman who was outside the box thinker, and I had some issues with my ear, and then she went straight to my heel. And I'm like, what are we doing here? But it alleviated. Maybe it was more placebo effect. I don't know. But, she did some stuff with my heel, my right and left heel, and that disappeared. And it was like, interesting. And then I never thought anything of it at that point. But when the RPR came back and Brian exposed us to it, and I knew it was out there, I just never really researched it. But Brian really got our offensive line in on that. I'm like, now I go back to the 1980s and go, there's some validity to this. And if our guys didn't do it right now, I'm not so sure that they would feel really good about it. Yeah.
I think, obviously people do it because I think you perform better and you're more durable.
Yep.
The people that do RPR, they report eliminate concussions of all things.
Yeah.
What? But I think one of the most forgotten things with RPR is the value of calming the body and getting into a performance state pre-game. I have seen races where all 8 kids in the finals of 100 meters are hitting their sternum and belly breathing because they know RPR, and they not only want to run faster, but they want to calm down that ping pong that's going on in their
100%.
brain.
100%.
If you think about how we used to get, my dad was a 47-year coach, and he used to tell me that the coach's job is to raise adrenaline levels before a game, to get them bouncing off the walls and all that stuff. So I was wrong for 55 years as a coach. I thought that that's what I needed to do for my 4x4.
Sure.
And they are much better belly breathing and then hitting some of these things. And you're giving kids tools that they can use. I've heard of coaches getting RPR done on game day.
Oh, yeah. Because I wouldn't doubt it at all. Yeah. It locks you in. That's one of the other, I guess, collateral things that we see is that them getting together in that little circle group. But track guys have been doing this forever. In that little circle connects all of them together. They're looking at each other. They're breathing together as one unit. And it's really, again, I don't know if they would feel as good if they didn't do it and just did their own thing. So, because it kind of centers them all that, hey, okay, it's time to practice now.
They showed Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive line before a game, and they were doing that, like you said, kind of in a huddle. They were barefoot, the grounding effect.
Sure.
And one of the announcers said, why are they rubbing their beards? How come they're rubbing their beards? We know, right? We know.
Absolutely. But think about what you said about, let's just take Tom Brady. He's always known for pregame, walking down, running down, jogging down to the end zone and getting all hyped up. But what's the next thing he does when he starts to turn back around and go towards the sideline? Take a knee, kneel, whatever it may be, refocus, breathe, pray, whatever it may be. You got to get it back down to norm and center up in terms of focus. So yeah, I get it. I understand it.
Yeah. You mentioned pray. Yeah. I've read where, like, doing the rosary, there is a rhythm with the rosary that calms 100%. Our brain and locks us in.
Yeah.
So there's like a physiological effect that happens when we do different things. So we talked about how you practice less and that keeps you healthier. You hit less, that keeps you healthier. We've mentioned RPR. One of the things that is mysterious, I preach it, but it's still mysterious as hell. Kyle Bolton, when he was at TCU, they would speed train 2 or 3 times a week. It came to light when they were playing for the national championship, like, oh my God, they're speed training during the week. And so we had Kyle speak at a TFC. We were having a beer together afterwards, and I thought I knew the answer. I said, so why do you speed train during the season? I thought it would be keep speed high, performance level, the best athletes win. I thought one word answer, health.
Mhm.
And ever since he said that,
Yeah.
I thought, why is low dose sprinting? Why does that keep you healthier? Do you think that's the case?
I mean, I don't know enough about it, Tony, so it's hard for me to answer it. That's the one thing is this is always evolving because again, you know a lot more about the speed world than I do and ever will know. But as long as you keep diving into it and keep a willingness to expand your mind and listen, and it may not fit what you're doing. And that's the one thing. That's why all this stuff fit because we had already been thinking about it for, like I said, 3 to 4 years prior. But yeah, I can't answer that because I just don't have enough. There's a lot smarter people out there than me in regards to that.
But you
It
can
makes sense.
say
It makes sense.
that since you've started sprinting,
Mhm.
and my theory, by the way, is that when you do the most extreme movement a human can do, and every muscle has to work in coordination and rhythm and all those things, it makes our body do. It's the tide that lifts all boats.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
No, I
believe
get
that
it.
it's the perfect warm up. Now, even if you can't answer why speed is critical to the health of your team, since you've adopted speed based stuff, your team has been healthier.
Much healthier. So our first year and what really, really sold us, we knew the hardest guys to buy in. It wasn't going to be the coaches. It wasn't going to be the coaches because we had already dove into it. We had understood why we were doing it. We had talked about why we want to do this. It was the grinders. It was the guys that had dads that played back in the 80s and 90s and you got to keep working and you got to do this and you got to.
That's a high percentage of your team, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So it was the guys, the loafers. So this is how it was broken down to us by Alex Tanney. Grinders and loafers. And then in the middle, you have your hard workers. The grinders get hurt at the same incidence as the loafers. Grinders get hurt because they don't give their body time to recover, right? They got to go, 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 because that's what you've been taught on Twitter. That's what you've been taught on TikTok. That's what dads have been preaching. You got to outwork everybody. Work, 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 and never give yourself a chance to recover. Loafers get hurt because they're not prepared. But everybody wants the hard worker because that guy understands mentality-wise that I do have to rest. I do have to sleep. I have to give my time. I can't sprint. I'm not a track guy, but I'm not dumb either. You can't sprint more than twice a week and expect, just like you can't bench or squat more than twice a week, you're going to get hurt. You're going to get injured because you're doing too much volume. Yeah, that was kind of what when he said grinders and loafers got hurt at the same rate. I was like, what? You know what I mean? Because everybody's been told to grind, 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 right? And he goes, no, the guys that don't get hurt are the ones in the middle that do all the hard work, but then they also take care of their body, get good sleep. Does that make sense? Take a day off here and there. And I was like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Coaches, Titan GPS is the ultimate tool for football programs, including back-to-back Minnesota State champion Stewartville High School, a leader in sprint-based football. Built specifically for high school football, Titan tracks the metrics that matter: top speed, explosive acceleration, speed repeatability, and the game-changing truck stick. Titan's easy-to-use system delivers actionable insights at a glance, and their exceptional customer service ensures you're supported every step of the way. With built-in leaderboards to fuel competition and unmatched accountability, because the eye in the sky doesn't lie, champions trust Titan GPS, proudly made in the USA. Ready to join the best? Message them on X at Titan Sensor today to get started. In my mind, I'm kind of thinking like, if your football team only practiced on Tuesdays, you would probably get hurt in games because you haven't done enough.
Yeah, right.
But if you practice 3 hours a day, 6 days a week, and then played in a game too, you would get hurt doing that as well. And so if our goal is 100% healthy, we better find
the happy medium.
And we don't know where that is exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we learn every day.
It's intriguing. Yeah.
I think that when we start timing stuff, we learn stuff. Because if your team is slow, they're not healthy. And then you have to look in the mirror and say, is this our fault?
Yeah, 100%.
And so we learn how to switch and move things around. And then before we get talking about something else, we mentioned, RPR, not hitting, short practices, sprinting as all things that provide more health. Talk to me about conditioning.
What conditioning?
It's hard for me to say the C word. I say the in shape I gave a list of, I showed Tristan Wirfs at an amazing combine. Should have been picked number 1 overall, and somehow he fell to 20 something.
100%. Yeah.
100%. He was a total freakazoid. And he listed all the things they do at the combine. And I interjected a 3-mile run. I said, which of these things are not done in the combine? Pretty easy, right?
Yeah.
And then I say, why? Is endurance not a key performance indicator? And the answer is, hell no, it's not.
Not in this sport.
No, it is. It is if you're a miler.
Yeah. Not in this sport. Yeah.
Not in this sport. And I love what Brian Kula talks about. When we do high level stuff, like a football practice, we're getting in shape.
Yeah. If you practice right. If you do. Yep. Go backwards. We talked about practicing for an hour and a half. Our longest practice is an hour and 45 minutes. And 10 minutes of that hour and 45 is a walkthrough period. So it's really only an hour and 35 of movement. You have a very short period of time to get a lot done. So if you practice slow and you practice inefficiently, yeah, you might be out of condition. But if you practice the right way, you need to do the speed-based stuff. You need to do short duration. You can't do it too much. Yeah, we don't need to condition. I used to do that. And I was like, what are you doing?
Though I do believe that these teams that are told they outwork everybody, and maybe they do, when they put 4 fingers in the air, what they're saying is that we deserve to be good in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And I think that's powerful.
Yeah.
Me and my son, Alec, we argue about that.
That's
it's just so hard to discredit that pride that we have outworked this team. We're going to be better. But what I have found is that both teams are tired in the fourth quarter, and the faster team is probably still has the advantage.
Well, they got a little bit more gas in the tank. So, yeah.
Yeah, energy is the currency of performance.
Yeah. I just name dropped Roger Haynes, the track coach at Monmouth. Wonderful, wonderful mentor. Again, a little bit outside the box thinker, kind of doesn't do it exactly the way everybody else did it, and ultra successful. Roger always said the same thing you said, is we just keep regurgitating what we were taught. And he said, I had to break that, back when he was a track coach, he had to break that mentality also. And that made a lot of sense. I was a young coach at that time, and here was a track coach telling me, he always yelled at us about the way we practiced, and I just didn't listen. Not in a negative way, but it was like, hey, you might want to think about this, that, and the other. But our most in condition teams were when we were at Monmouth in 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, when we were a true no huddle team. Like we were no huddle, ultra fast, clipping every 12 seconds later, we're snapping the ball again. So fast, speed. We didn't have to condition then. And it made a lot of sense. And it's like, we're playing fast. And, we're making you have to play at our speed. And boy, we never ran at all. Never. Because of the way we practiced, right?
Kind of counterintuitive. The 2 of the questions I get from sprint-based football coaches, a lot of small school coaches say, all my guys play 2 ways. Don't they need more conditioning? And the answer is no, they needed more days off. That Travis Hunter wasn't doing extra wind sprints.
No, he wasn't, was he?
He was taking days off to prepare for the big, and those 2-way players, you can't lose them or your season's gone.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, what if we play fast? Don't we need lots more conditioning? And you just totally destroyed that if you practice at a performance level, you may be gassed in the fourth quarter.
So will they.
Everybody is.
Yeah, they will.
And there's magic in the game, and you're energetic, and your kids love practice. And oh my God, there's all those things that go into it. And so no, you do not need more conditioning because you play fast.
I mean, and I put quotes around this, but you can hide conditioning. If you want to look at it as conditioning, you can hide it by the way you practice. If you're doing repetitions and if it's a 2-minute sequence, you're hiding conditioning, right? But you're doing it quickly and you're doing it fast. And they don't even know that they're getting that reaction by their body. They don't know. They're just practicing.
And as you get faster, Tony Villani's game speeds of 12 to 17 miles an hour.
Yeah.
They don't wear your ass out anymore.
Oh boy, that's another one. I mean, you're pretty connected with Tony, but that guy has changed. I'm 55 years old, and the way that he talks has changed the way I coach.
He's brilliant. And, people thought that when he was spewing this 12 to 17 stuff, that you're like, oh, you better not let Holler hear about that because he's going to block you or something. And so we are now like really good friends.
Yeah.
And my pyramid of success is rest, recovery, sleep, nutrition. And then it's athleticism, which is sprint, lift, jump, bounce. And then the next one's Tony Villani.
Yeah.
Now let's get good at the 90 roll.
Yeah.
But let's don't do that while we're still slow as hell. Because if you can only run 18 miles an hour, those game speeds wear you out. So what I like to say is if we could get a team faster, which you know you can do, their sub max is more efficient and they burn less gas.
Well, if you're playing football and you can't, let's say a kid taps at 21, his max velocity at 21, pretty consistently when he opens up, that 17 or that 15 or 16 looks a whole lot faster than if you're tapping at 18 max velocity. And it's like, I'm not really worried about you because I know when you open up, I'm not getting threatened. It looks a lot different when you're opening up at 20, 21. Yeah. That 15 looks a lot faster than it does.
So I know you don't do a conditioning test, but it's still important to note that as we're talking about the speed reserve thing, there are athletes that reach out to me like, hey, we have the 16 110s or whatever they do. Don't I need to be conditioning for that conditioning test? And I said, hell no, just do fast stuff.
Yeah.
If you go in running 22 miles an hour and you only have to run like 15 miles an hour on every 100, that's easy. Now, that poor big guy, he may die.
Yeah, he might.
He
seriously might. Yeah.
Might seriously die because he's so close to a speed ceiling. So even that guy needs to get faster. So it's kind of an alternative way to get in shape.
Yeah. Yeah. You'd love Coach Ragone when we're talking about the bigs because he's, again, same age as me and been doing it for a long time. And you just change. You're just like, you know what? There's a lot better way of doing this. And he was way ahead of the curve on me, faster than me. So he had been doing a lot of this stuff because of Brian Adams with the offensive line. And then those two kind of got us started thinking, boy, there's a lot better way of doing things than what we're doing right now. So it was the right time. A lot of things happened because it's timing. We had a group of 10 fifth-year kids coming back because of COVID. So it was like the right time to do this because we had a very experienced group coming back that we had to keep healthy. And it's like, yeah, let's make the change now because this group, we need to keep them as healthy as we possibly can because they don't need all the repetitions that some of these younger kids might need. So it was interesting timing. So it worked out perfect.
I saw in your PowerPoint that you mentioned one of my favorite subjects, which is cramps.
Yeah.
And so you guys have a bunch of cramps in the first couple of games because you don't condition enough, right?
Well, we used to.
I'm kidding.
No, I know. But we used to have them. We don't have them anymore. But yeah.
So, okay, that's a good, we used to have them and now we don't. We used to condition more.
Yep.
And now we don't. We used to not sprint at max velocity in time. And now we do.
Yep.
And it's hard not to draw a correlation.
Yeah. So the year that we switched to this kind of mentality, we had no hamstrings, no quad injuries, no ITs, no cramping. The only two kids that had a cramp in our first game were guys that had the grinder mentality that we hadn't broken yet. We're out here 30 minutes before practice, getting in individual cone drill work and this, that, and the other before we got to practice. Those were the only guys that cramped. But through training camp, the first year that we did this, no ITs, no hamstrings, no quads, no soft tissue injuries at all, zero. And we're like, whoa, okay, this is different. This is way different.
And we don't know for sure. It's like when Kyle Bolton said we sprint because of health.
Yeah.
It's hard to draw direct lines and, you can't get Dr. Ken Clark to do a study on it and all that stuff. But it just makes all the sense in the world to me that these teams in Florida that practice in August and they practice too long and too hard.
Yeah.
And they don't cramp in practice, but they cramp in the first game. That it's not hydration.
Yeah.
It's not endurance. It is the fact that you practice too hard and too long and probably never got to performance level speeds. You're in third gear games or in fifth gear. So you cramp in games because you're in fifth gear and you are not conditioned to play in fifth gear. And so there's a nervous system lockup.
Yep. It makes sense. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. But again, this is a lot of track guys have known this stuff for a long time. That's the way I look at it.
We were talking about the wave thing earlier, like a weekly wave. I say we have a wave thing in our life. We sleep and we're awake. If you don't sleep, then you're high. Your days aren't going to be very good. So it's important that we have that wave. Do you do some things to have an internal wave in practice? Let's say your Wednesday, your red day, where it's all gas. Are you consistently at high levels during that practice? Or
no, it's a wave. Yeah, it's so the wave is basically just the structure of in terms of practice structure. I think we do some pretty cool things, but we'll have waves because we have competitive periods on Wednesdays. So you've got your normal how practice is structured, and you got individual time. And I tell our guys, and this is something that, again, over time, but I'll say this is what I want right now. I want 50%. I want 60%. I want 90% on this drill, whatever it may be. Because again, a wave, you can't go 90% the whole time during individual time. So we'll tell them, this is a run through. This is a jog through. I need you to go because our quarterback needs to tie me up on this. So we'll use those kind of percentages that you guys have always done. So that's kind of unique. But during practice, you can't go 90% the whole time or 80%. So there are waves. The apex waves are the competitive periods on a Wednesday. So, yeah.
Which I think brings me to my next thing that popped in my head. You said you do some cool things. You talk about the competitive things. One of my sayings is you got to gamify practice. And what does that mean? In track or in a workout, it means if you can measure it, measure it.
Yeah.
Like speed, strength, bar speed, how high you jump, whatever you can measure it because it improves performance. But the other thing is to make the practice look like a game. And the thing that pops into my head was you put the ball on the 5-yard line and say you got 3 plays to score. That's like a game. I still get kind of like bouncy when I hear somebody say that because that was so much more fun than the 90% of the practice that was total BS back in the day. So what things are you doing that makes practice gamified?
So we'll do, again, those competitive periods. So the easiest one to kind of is your inside run, right? That's easy, but it's short, sweet, and to the point. That's the one thing that we've gotten away from the traditional practicing is if you go too long, your susceptibility to injury because they're bang, bang, bang the whole time. Control how many reps your best players get because you can't ask your best sprinter to sprint in 8 different races on game day for them, or they're going to tap out, they're going to get hurt, fatigued, whatever it may be. So be short, sweet, and to the point. Your one-on-ones for your skill kids. Although it's not realistic to a point, they still get juiced up. It's competitive, but it's short, sweet, and to the point with our starters. Let's get a few good ones and you're out and let's let the other guys rep at this time. But some competitive situational stuff because football is situational. And so the best thing that we do is a third down call it period where it's max of 3 reps. It's best on best, 3 reps, ball's moving, and then it's random. So our play callers are getting random third down calls. They don't know what's coming. I'm the one that controls that, so I have it all mapped out. But I'll go from 3rd and 1 to 3rd and 15. First one plays 3rd and 1. What personnel? Boom. The next play, we're moving the ball 7 yards down the field on the different hash, and you find the ball, and it's 3rd and 15 now. So that flips your whole mentality of what personnel group you might be in and what play calls. And so it's good for our coordinators and it's really good for the kids because it's 3 reps and boom, you're out and the next group's in, and then we just keep rotating like that all the way down the field for a 10-minute period, 8-minute period, whatever it is.
That's so different than
sitting on a line.
Doing it 12 times and then you get pissed off your kids, 10 up downs and like just all that crazy stuff.
And we'll time it. So we'll time it, not time it, but we'll time it by keeping track of who won, like defense won this rep, offense won this rep, defense, and we'll do it. And when we get to the point where we're at the end, if it's tied, we'll go 1 rep with our best on best. And then it might be for, 20 push-ups, whatever it may. Who cares? The kids don't care what it's for. It's competitive. So, yeah.
It's gamified.
Yeah. We try. That's as close as we can get, right?
Yeah. And if your practices don't replicate the game some, maybe you need to rethink your practice.
Yeah.
I love all that stuff. We could talk all day. I thought about maybe ending this with a lot of times when I see like mission statements and value statements, I just kind of glaze over, like a school's mission statement. I don't think they put much thought into it, but I like your mission statement. The 3 things you had on that slide. Explain family.
Family to us, every football's a natural. You know this.
Sure.
Having coached it, played it.
The most natural.
It's very natural. And I think if you do it correctly, every football program in the country has that family type. Kids from all different places and different backgrounds. And if it's in a high school, that kid lives on the east side, this kid lives on the west side, but they have to be unified. They may not always connect every single minute of the day, but they're going to be connected when they're on the football field because of the family. But I think we take it to a different level. I always have. And this started way back at Monmouth when I became a head coach. It's forget about me. I love you. That's family. That's what family means to us. So we actually try to, every kid's going to come in with their own mentality of what family means to them. And I think that's natural. But we try to unify that mentality here by saying, you know what? It's about, forget about me. I love you. I'm going to do everything I possibly can within the context of who I am to help you become your best. And then everybody reciprocates that. Everybody's working for each other and not for themselves. So yeah, we've tried to unify the messaging of what family means so that kids weren't coming in with their own definition. This is who we are and this is what we're about. And it's selfless. It's very, very selfless.
And you put a period,
Yeah.
F period,
Yeah.
Forget about me.
Yeah.
The first time I ever heard that was, I think, 10 years ago when Steve Jones, who had won 70 straight as a high school coach in Wisconsin, and now he's on the sideline for the Green Bay Packers. He wrote the book, The Twin Thieves. And when I saw that, I thought football is such a natural for that.
Yeah.
And even cross country. Our
100%.
cross country program does that. Track is much harder to do that because all of our events are so different. But I think that's truly teaching kids what it takes to be a successful person when they actually have a family.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Cool stuff. Now, your second thing, I love the pairing of these two words, health and toughness. Because some people think the health is soft, but toughness is not soft.
Well, there's a whole industry right now on health, isn't there? Right? And then in societal right now, we're trying to fight the toughness part of it because I think that people feel like that's gone away just across in the whole spectrum of things. Athletics might be the last frontier on that. But at the end of the day, yeah. But again, this goes back to John Gallardi. If I would have thought this way, is a very, very healthy team because his goal was to always have his best players on Saturdays. If you look at all his kind of interviews and everything that he talked about was not having his players on Saturdays that were his best players that's why he did what he did, because he was frightened that they wouldn't be there on game day. But boy, if you ever coached against or watched his teams play, I don't care what they did, they were tough as nails. And we played them in 2005 in my first playoff game as a head coach. Yeah, they were tough. They were tough. They were well coached and boy, they were physical.
I liked, toughness is a weird thing to chase because I'm a believer that toughness grows from your family stuff. There can be a woman that becomes pretty tough if their child is threatened. So I think that love of your teammates and love of the game and love of practice creates a toughness. And I say that because so many football coaches, as you know, still do high profile social media things where they show their guys doing random hard things to create toughness.
Don't get me started. Yes. Yeah.
But it's so there.
I get it. I mean, there's some mental things to that. It has nothing to do with physical toughness. I get it. The mentality of fighting through the tough things. But again, I get that. Urban Meyer made a career off of doing a lot of tough, but it was to build the mental part of it, not the physical. It was nothing that they were doing. Like mat drills, having done them, dumbest thing in the world.
Thank you.
There's nothing that you get out of, minus a couple like drills that have change of direction, but you're so fatigued at that point, it really doesn't matter. It's unifying a whole group of men to one common enemy, and that common enemy is your coaching staff. And that's okay too, I guess, right? Hey, at least there's one common enemy.
And I always caution coaches that say, surely if we're doing mat drills one day a week, that doesn't hurt us.
Right.
But when you're doing that, you are doing that instead of doing something else.
Yes. Yeah. Dumbest thing in the world. Dumbest thing I ever did. Dumbest thing I ever coached, whatever. But I get why they did it.
Yes.
And I didn't get it at the time. But at the same time, you're basically, like you said, you're taking away an opportunity to maybe do something really, really highly productive, become a better football player.
Doing an off day instead of doing something stupid hard to build fake toughness, your players may be better after an off day.
Yeah. I mean, there's people that are going to fight you on that one because of the mental part of it.
Yep,
the unification, the Navy SEAL training, all that stuff that people do. And I get it. I understand it. I understand why they're doing it. But you're putting kids susceptible to getting hurt because they're so fatigued and they're doing movements that really don't translate to anything that you're going to do on the football field. We don't all have the full answers on everything. But
okay, the third thing on your value slide from your PowerPoint was interesting to me because you went from this love thing, family, and then you went to the health thing, which I just think is the key, but it's a tough health. We're not going to be soft
No.
football players because we prioritize health. Matter of fact, we are going to be more violent in our collisions because we will be faster and we love the game and we fight for our teammates. But the third thing you said was speed and performance, which a lot of football coaches don't talk like that.
Well, I think they do now, though, Tony. I think that there's going backwards. No one paid attention to, they thought he was a crazy old man, John Gallardi, but now he's probably the most genius guy that's ever been out there in the coaching realm. If we would have paid attention to it, it's coming around. So, and I told Tony Nally this too. I said, keep pushing it because you're hitting home with people right now, just not everybody right now. So, but don't stop. Just, not everybody's following through. There are people following through right now. They get it. They understand it. They're looking at things differently now. But the groundbreaking people, it takes a while. Obviously, it takes a long time for it to hit home with the majority. And I think it's there. It's getting
You almost
there.
have to be leaning in. Like
Yep.
you described several years. You act like it's a handful of years. I have a feeling like you've been leaning into this all your life.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I have. And stupidly didn't follow through on it. Probably should have. But when we were going no huddle, fast, no huddle back in the day before anybody else was doing that, not anybody, but way before everybody was fast tempoing things, I should have stayed with it. And I didn't. Because I talked myself out of it because of the quarterback position. And I should have stayed with it because we were unique. We were a way better football program when we were doing that kind of stuff. When we were run fast every day. Everything was fast. Everything was predicated on speed. I should have stayed with it and I didn't. And I talked myself out of it because of one position, but it was better. It was better healthy for the team. And so you live and you learn.
How are you going to be next year?
I think pretty good. We got a really good quarterback. So that's the one thing that we're pretty excited about is we feel like we've got a pretty unique skill set at that position that I have not seen for quite a long time in my coaching career. I haven't seen it since probably 2011, and we've got a kid that's like that. So
where's he from?
Played at Hersey High School, which is
nice.
Yeah. So transfer kid. So
yeah,
we're excited. I mean, I think if you have that position, you at least got a shot.
And who do you play in my neighborhood?
Geez.
I mean, on the road.
On the road, well, we play North Central. We got them at their place. Let me think. Wheaton is at our place. We're at Elmhurst. Wesleyan is here. I mean, that would be the closest schools to you.
And for those people, my uncle Kelly Kane actually played at Wesleyan. I actually remember as a 10-year-old going to one of his games. He was a linebacker, and he played against a quarterback named Kenny Anderson.
He was pretty good, wasn't he?
He was pretty good. And so my point being, I think that people maybe aren't aware of D3 athletics. They should be because it's it's D3 athletics. It's the way it was meant to be. And maybe it's changing, but it's getting better. It's still good, right? It's getting better.
Oh, it's 100 times better than it used to be. Yeah.
But I don't think people understand, that CCIW is just tons of tradition, great football players. Illinois Wesleyan had Jack Sikma as a basketball player. And typically, as so many of the school has been, is this weird mix of small school great players with some suburban guys that maybe slip through the cracks. And we have a triple jumper named Trayson Bones, 48-1. Fifth in the state. His dad played in the NFL for 10 years for the Bears, Fabian Bones. He is all conference. He is 6'2", 180. His speed numbers are rocketing for not a single scholarship offer.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
And so he goes to Wisconsin Oshkosh.
Yeah.
And he's going to be a pretty good player there.
Heck yeah, he's going to be a really good player there. Yeah.
Well, people don't understand how good D3 athletics are, and then just the experience of being on a true football team and not the NIL and transfer.
Well, I tell you, I'm a firm believer in this. Our kids love football just as much as the University of Illinois kids, as much as the University of Georgia. Just keep naming all these schools. Our kids love football just as much as those players do. They just don't have that physical talent that those kids, or genetic differences that those kids have. And but that doesn't mean that they don't love the game and care about the game and care about their teammates any different than the University of Georgia kid. But I could talk about this one for a long time. But what's going on in collegiate athletics right now with the transfer portal and the NIL and all that, we're going to start to see the level of Division III athletes skyrocket because of
kind of counterintuitive. I've heard other coaches say that.
No, the roster limits are going to drop down kids to lower levels. Well, it's going to start trickling down. They're not all going to go JUCO. They're not going to all, because parents aren't going to want their kids to experience the JUCO level because of academics and this, that, and the other. So we're going to start to see a little bit better athlete fall down to us at some point. Boy, the athletes right now are good, but you're not getting 11 of them on the field at the same time. You're getting a kid that shouldn't probably be playing Division III, and they're killing it. And so it's fun to watch. It definitely is fun to watch.
Well, best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Man, I can't wait to follow your team. This has been a great conversation. You got to have a podcast to sit down and talk to somebody for an hour.
Yeah, I love it.
This has been great. I absolutely loved it. And I want to talk again, and I want to get you up to speak at the Track Football Consortium.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Good luck to you this season. And yeah, have a great summer.
Appreciate it, Tony. Take care.
Thank you again for listening to the Sprint-based football series on the Coach and Coordinator podcast. Be sure to check out our presenting sponsor, Titan GPS. It's used by Sprint-based football coaches to get better data and understand the player load and how they can adjust that over the course of the season. It'll help you find out a lot about your team. It's used by Garrett Muller, who's a two-time state champion at Stewartville High School in Minnesota. He uses it for all kinds of things, like seeing how his team's speed is progressing over the course of the season. I could say that in 2024, they actually got faster over the course of the season following their sprint-based football recipe. Titan Sensors also has the popular truck stick metric designed specifically for football and inspired by sprint-based football. Follow all we're doing at coachandcoordinator.com. You can get our show notes there. We have articles on these episodes as well. And follow us on X at Coach K. Grabowski.